Has anybody ever said something to you which has made you go, oh, well, I never thought of myself like that? Well, if not, you're missing a treat. Obviously, we're hoping that that thing that person has said is a nice thing. But the main point is it could be something that really comes as a surprise to you about you. That's kind of weird. Well, that's what this short episode is going to explore. It's about having an extraordinary shift of perspective on your own experience, your own sense of who you are. And it's a good thing, not a bad thing, but it's definitely a thought nudger. And that's what we're going to do now. Just nudge you into thinking about, are you opening yourself up to situations where this could happen? Don't worry, all this will become clear, I hope, in a minute when I share a little story. I'm Tricia Lewis, the host of Self-Belief Unsquashed, and I'm just on a bit of an unsquashing mission generally because I've had to unsquash myself. And it's just making sure that none of those fears, illusions, and baggage, fibs, as I call them, are holding you back. And the best way is simply to keep spotting things, pressing pause, doing a few reframes, thinking out of the box and staying curious. And that's the vibe of this podcast. I hope you'll agree. So let's unpack what I just said about this perspective shifting moment. And I'll start by a beautiful quote, which says exactly this. It's by Anais Nin, and it's, "We see things not as they are, but as we are ourselves. When we open ourselves to the perspectives of others, we discover new truths about our own experiences." Now, obviously, being open-minded, listening, being able to go out of your little box of thinking and perhaps change your mind on things, that's all important if we're going to grow as humans. But I'm really narrowing this down to something more personal about your own identity, if you like, and the lazy historical default thinking that you've simply stopped questioning. I'm going to give you this story because I think then it will all become clear. I'm in my late 60s. I made really good friends with somebody when I was 3 years old, and we are still in touch. And that's a bit of a miracle in itself. We lived in the same village, but my friend moved away when we were about 12. I was absolutely distraught, I can tell you, because I wasn't the kind of little girl who had loads of friends. I don't want to do violins, but I was more a sort of one very special friend person. So this was quite a tragedy, but I survived. Anyway, when she first moved away, because we were really close, we'd done all those silly childhood games together, you know, making up things and dressing up and pretending to be and all that stuff. And we'd lived just around the corner from each other. And it was in the days where you could just wander down the road and go to play in each other's houses and gardens. We were very lucky. We lived in a nice place in houses with nice gardens. So all of that was rather blissful. And then she moved away. We kept in touch, though, by letters. And amazingly, I've still got her letters. So that in itself is a treat. But of course, this was pre-internet. So we didn't have WhatsApp or Facebook. We tried to meet up. We did in school holidays. But then as we pursued our work life, our personal life, you know, it was more difficult, and those meetups became irregular, but we still managed the birthday and Christmas greetings. And then, of course, when the internet came along, we could do that on Facebook. And yeah, we just kept that thread going. But recently, very recently, we decided to meet up, and not just any old meetup. We met up in the place we had grown up. So we actually parked outside the house I used to live in, and we walked around to where she used to live. And she just stopped me on this street corner and said, "Well, this is where we first met." I said, "What, right here?" She said, "Yes." She said, in those days, it was a treat to see the dustman. And so I'd ask my mum, can I go out and see the dustman? And you'd clearly done the same thing. And we'd met on this corner here. Bear in mind, we were 3 years old. So it was a very different world then, wasn't it? Anyway, we met, and apparently we didn't know each other. I just moved to this new village, this new little housing estate. This was in the 1960s. And I walked up to her and I said, I've just moved here. Can I be your friend? Now, when she told me this, and this is the bit that's relevant, it was a real whoa moment in terms of a shift in my perspective, because I'd grown up with the sense that I was a shy kid, but it never really fitted me well as a label. And I thought to myself, well, I wasn't shy. At 3 years old, I walked up to a complete stranger. I was new in the area and I simply came out with it. As kids, we are less hampered by all that worrying about, is it going to sound silly and all the rest of it? But even still, it was quite brave. And so I gave myself, my adult self, a bit of a metaphorical hug for that. And I thought, no, I wasn't shy. I think the hunch that I then had much later in life, I mean, only about 10 years ago, if that, was that it wasn't shyness so much as self-consciousness. And it was something to do with feeling a bit weird and a bit of an outsider, and therefore trying to mold myself to fit in. And that always gives you a slightly uncomfortable, awkward feeling, which probably manifested itself in some way as a sort of shyness. So that little moment, just that tiny gift of a memory that I had not got, but she had, amazingly, was really important. But then the day continued like this, because beyond the sort of going to visit the playground and the school and all the rest of it, and oh yes, do you remember we used to play with Tommy who lived in this house here? We started to share feelings. And this is where you get all this rich stuff, don't you? Because she started to tell me things which again shifted my perspective. And beyond that, if you like, friendship origin story, there was this story about how we felt about each other's parents. Now, I don't know whether this makes any sense to you, but I think it's probably quite common for little kids to envy somebody else's parents. The grass is always greener on the other side, isn't it? Because you never see the whole picture. It's a bit like seeing people living their perfect life on social media. You don't see behind the scenes. It's a bit like going to networking events and seeing the perfect, business owner. You never see behind the scenes. And it's like that with each other's parents. Although we spent a lot of time in each other's houses, we never really spent the 24 hours every day and going on holidays together and all the rest of it to know all the ins and outs. And I thought I wanted her parents because, I'm 5, 6, 7, whatever, because they seemed more in love. I thought they were more romantic. They were more cuddly. They used to hold hands when they were sat on the sofa. They were a bit funny. Her mother was a bit more out there. Her father was maybe sillier. And so that's why I wanted her parents. But as we were doing this memory lane trip, my friend started saying things like, oh, we only started going to Brownies because your mum signed us up. Or, oh, yeah, do you remember when we were about 11, we did that Meals on Wheels voluntary thing? That was to do with your mum because she organised that. Or do you remember that big pageant, that great theatre thing that we were in when we were about 10 and your mum helped make all the costumes? Well, it was because of her that we got involved with it in the first place. And I thought, oh, I'd never really thought of it like that. I had not given my mother credit for something that my friend was quite envious of. See? Perspective shift. We just carry our own stories along with us, don't we? And unless we open ourselves up to a situation where somebody can start sharing their thoughts and their perspectives, we might never have that shift. And then the third bit of perspective shift happened just as we were finishing our day together, and I was going to drop my friend off at the station, and we were sat in the car and it was raining, and we just continued free flow chat. And now we were talking about our adulthood. We'd gone beyond childhood, and I was saying something like, yeah, I kind of always felt a bit envious that you had gone to college, you'd studied for this thing, you'd got your qualification and you'd got a really good job in it, and then you'd worked your way up in that specialist subject and got a really good career. And she turned to me and she said, yeah, but I always envied your rather crazy life. It seemed a lot more exciting. And then she said, and in any case, do you know what? I'm not sure I actually wanted to do that job that I did for all those years. It was okay. But in many ways, I just kind of went along with it because it was such a progression and never questioned the fact that perhaps it wasn't for me. She said, actually, I always wanted to be a writer. So that was a big perspective shift, because rather than writing my life off as a chaotic mess of, rather failed work life, and to be fair, also a slightly more chaotic personal life than my friend, I looked upon it as a more adventurous thing. And gosh, somebody actually would have liked to have gone down that avenue that I thought perhaps wasn't the right avenue. And in fact, that person is also revealing that sometimes when you get into a more steady, progressive study and work lane, it can become a bit of a rut and can stop you breaking out into a bit more chaos that might reveal a whole other direction that might just suit you better. So there we go. That's a lot of shifting of perspective. Now, you might not happen to have a day like that with somebody that you've known since you were 3. So can you have this little gift of perspective shift in any other way? Yes, of course you can. The important thing is that you place yourself in company, in situations where this could happen. And what I mean by that is social groups, or if you're in business, perhaps networking groups, people that you're going to meet in person, ideally, because that's where the magic happens. New people, possibly, who see you, and this is completely actually against what I've just said, because I was talking about somebody who'd known me when I was 3, but it could be someone who has actually only known you for a short time, but somebody who you feel able to be yourself with, and somebody who doesn't know all your background and is simply reacting to you as you are. And the more you are being, the more that reaction from them will tell you things. So to give you an example, I remember being at a networking event, and this was a tribe that I had found when I first, a couple of years into setting up my coaching business. I've been to all these networking events and they're just not aligned well with me. And I was feeling really out of sorts about the whole thing. And then I discovered this other kind of networking community and it fitted. And I remember somebody saying to me, not long into getting to know these people a little bit, because I was being more me, they said to me, well, yeah, you're Trisha and you're nuts. And instead of taking that as an insult, which I might have done years back, I pressed pause for a moment and thought, no, this is a nice thing. They've just said a nice thing. And I realized that they liked that in fact, some people were slightly envious of the fact that I was being just me, and that it was a bit of a wake-up call for them to be a bit more relaxed and not so worried about being a bit different or a bit weird or a bit crazy or a bit nerdy or whatever it is that they were worried about coming across as. So I liked that. But it wouldn't have happened in some of those other more formal events because I would not have been being so natural, so who I am, really. I think this makes sense, doesn't it? Make sure that you are not stuck in a rut, only taking perhaps little bits of feedback from, I don't know, maybe a boss at work who is just going down a tick list, or maybe a relative who doesn't really know you properly, or maybe somebody who's, I don't know, a little bit jealous and is perhaps sort of just giving you feedback which is meant to put you down slightly, inadvertently. Just make sure that you're opening up situations where that gift of a wonderful little perspective shift on your experiences, your identity, the slightly unknown unknowns of your experience can reveal themselves. Because it's a lifelong thing, this getting to know yourself. And I hope you enjoy the journey. Wherever you are on it, stay curious and unsquashed. If you want to explore any more of these little life stories of mine that have got hopefully resonating, reflective purposes to them for you, then follow me on Medium, because that's where I do most of my writing, for the moment anyway. But I'm also on LinkedIn. Just look up Trisha Lewis or Self-Belief Unsquashed, and you'll come across my various profiles. I'm also on Instagram, and you'll get a lot of my climbing stuff on there as well, because that's my big hobby here in the autumn going into winter of my life. I am still growing, learning, and having, perspective shifts.